A year ago, this man screaming about liberty was elected president of Argentina. Viva la libertad, carajo! How has that worked out? Well, Javier Milei is a libertarian who promised to slash government spending. So, of course, reporters called him
far-right radical.
Far-right Javier Milei.
Far-right Javier Milei.
Why far-right? The far-right wants to ban most immigration, ban drugs, ban sex work, wants to impose tariffs. But Milei is a libertarian. He supports free trade.
Libre comercio, que vos, o sea, le vendés lo que producís a quien se te dé la gana.
He's also fine with sex work. He says gay marriage should be none of the government's business. He says people should have a right to choose their own gender. Milei mainly wants government to do less. But the media called him far-right and said his election will spell devastation.
Milei's approach to everything is to cut more government support in any way that helps people.
But the country's big government had already hurt people more than it helped.
People in Argentina are struggling with one of the highest inflation rates in the world.
Argentina is really like a warning and an example for the United States.
Ian Vasquez studies Latin America.
Argentina was one of the richest and one of the freest countries in the world. And then it started down a path of greater and greater government intrusion. It's the case study of a country that was once rich and became poor.
Javier Milei has become elected president.
When Milei came into power, there was 40% poverty rate. There was annual inflation of over 200%.
The media said Milei can't fix that. He's a snake oil salesman, a TV pundit with no government experience. He'll fail, they said, like his predecessors had.
Many predecessors have tried and failed to turn the economy around. Javier Milei will be no exception.
But Milei is an exception, a politician who told the truth.
No hay plata.
He was the first politician in generations to talk to Argentinians as though they were adults.
He explained that government has no money of its own, and whatever it spends, it takes from the people.
El Estado no puede dar nada porque no produce nada.
It's why when campaigning, Milei brandished this chainsaw to illustrate how much government needs to be cut. For my TV show, I used to say, you gotta cut more out of the budget and use these gimmicks. Then I used the chainsaw
to make really
drastic, horrible cuts.
I think he copied that from me.
Well, you know, he does pay a lot of attention to libertarians from around the world.
Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera.
In the United States, politicians who promise cuts rarely win votes, but Milei won by a landslide. The media then eagerly covered union protests against him.
Thousands are attending at demonstrations opposing his drastic cuts to public spending.
Cuts by the Libertarian government plunged the region into a financial crisis.
There was no way to avoid that because of the mess that the previous governments had left. The question is, what's the best way out? And Milei has said from the very beginning, the best path out is through freedom.
Viva la libertad, carajo! Milei's big cuts worked. And now a few in the media even admit that.
What he's been able to achieve in a very short time ought to be inspiring.
At first, this analyst trashed Milei.
He has no experience and he does not have an economic team. So he's going to fail.
But 8 months later, he acknowledged
his radical plan to save Argentina's economy seems to be working.
A lot of the international press in the last month has come out and said, we've got to take this guy seriously. This stuff is working.
Now, those changes have led to a budget surplus, the first in 15 years.
Inflation is down. The economy started to recover in the second part of last year, way before what most people expected. Milei is showing that his libertarian policies are working.
What does libertarian policy mean?
Milei got rid of 9 ministries. He cut government spending by 30%.
He fired thousands of government workers and cut handouts.
He has slashed energy and transport subsidies, government spending on things like pensions.
His deregulation ministry shut down 200 government offices.
2 deregulations per day since he's been in office. That's remarkable.
Sometimes the results were good immediately. Rent control in Argentina had created a shortage of apartments.
When Milei lifted rent controls, the supply of apartments in Argentina tripled and their price fell by about half.
Which libertarians keep saying that if you Get rid of the price controls, the supply goes up, and that reduces prices.
Milei really does understand free market economics.
Argentina still has big problems, although inflation is a fraction of what it was. It's still high. There's lots of poverty. And Argentina's tariffs make consumer goods expensive. This $800 iPhone costs almost $3,000 there.
Argentina still has a long way to go, and that's why Milei recently said that what's coming is the deep chainsaw.
Meaning much less government. What if we could have that in America?
Basically, we're on a path to bankruptcy.
Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency want to make Milei-style cuts in the United States.
We have to cut government spending, or we're just going to go bankrupt, just like a person would.
And Musk watched what Milei did.
He's making all the right moves.
Ministerio de Turismo y Deporte, afuera!
Milei has showed that cuts are possible. And as Milei cut government, he actually gained popularity. Freedom can work. If only our politicians will learn from Javier Milei.
Así que vayan, peleen por las ideas de la libertad. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!